to each and everyone. Now we're going to talk about on how to graph a periodic function of sine and cosine. But first, we're going to focus on how to graph sine in the form of y equals to sine x, wherein the period is equals to 2 pi. Now, one period is equivalent to one cycle of the graph. In order to find the value of x for the 5 key points, we have to use the formula period over 4. So in order to graph y sine x, there are steps on how to graph y sine x. So in graphing y sine x, we need to find first the value of x for the 5 key points. And in order to do that, we need to follow this formula. First, we need to use period over 4. So since our period is 2 pi, we're going to calculate 2 pi over 4. Now 2 pi over 4 is pi over 2. Next, going to follow this formula. X sub 1 is where all the cycle begin. It is a value of x where all the cycle begin. So it is 0. Next is x sub 2. The formula for x sub 2 is x sub 1 plus period over 4. Now our x sub 1 is 0, added by period over 4, which is 2 pi. So 0 plus pi over 2 is equals to pi over 2. Until we came up to x sub 5. We have x sub 3, x sub 2 plus period over 4. We have pi over 2 plus pi over 2. Pi over 2 plus pi over 2 is pi. And the next, pi is x sub 4, is equals to x sub 3 plus the period over 4. Wherein x sub 3 is pi, added by pi over 2. We have 3 pi over 2. And last one, x sub 5, the formula for x sub 5 is x sub 4 plus period over 4. So since x sub 4 is 3 pi over 2, added by pi over 2, we have 2 pi. So this is now our value of x for our 5 key points. The value of x for the 5 key points. We're going to list it here. So we have first our 0, which is our x sub 1. Next, our x sub 2 is pi over 2. And our x sub 3 is pi. And our x sub 4 is 3 pi over 2. And lastly, our x sub 5 is 2 pi. And these are now the x value we're going to use for the 5 key points. Now, second step, we're going to find the y value, or the value of y. So, the original value of y in graphing y sine x, or y is equals to sine x, we have 0, 1, 0, negative 1, and 0. That is the original value of y, and y is equals to sine x. Now, in graphing x and y, we only have to use the Cartesian plane, which consists now of the x-axis and the y-axis. So we're going to use now the Cartesian plane, which consists the y-axis and the x-axis. So for the x-axis, we're going to use the value of x here, which is 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So here's a 0, the midpoint. Next, we have pi over 2. Next, we have pi. And then next, we have 3 pi over 2. And next is 2 pi. So this is now our x value. So we can now put negative pi over 2. So for the y value, since 1 is the greatest number here, so we need to put 1 and negative 1. Now in graphing, we need to focus on the table. So we have x is 0 here, which is black. So we have a 0 and 0. We need to plot this point here. Next we have pi over 2 and 1. So we have pi over 2 and 1. Just have to point it, put a point on it. Next we have pi and 0. So pi should be in the x-axis and 0. Next we have 3 pi over 2 and then negative 1, which is found there. Next, last one, we have 2 pi and 0. 2 pi and 0. So after pointing all of it, all we need to do now is to connect those points smoothly using curved line. And that is now the graph of our y is equal to sine x. This is now the graphing of y sine x using this table. So how about we're going to graph again y sine x, but in this form. Y is equals to a sine x. Now, a here stands for the amplitude. Now, the amplitude is the distance of, or in the graph, or it is the displacement of on the graph, or on the Cartesian plane we're going to use in graphing. Now, we have here now, for example, y is equals to 2 sine x. So in graphing y equals to 2 sine x, step 1 we need to find first the period. So the period is still 2 pi, and the amplitude is 2. Next step, I'm going to find the x value for the 5 key points that we're going to use in graphing y equals to 2 sine x. Now again, in finding the x values for the 5 key points, we have period 2 pi and we have the amplitude 2. Now in finding the value of x, again, first we need to follow this formula, period over 4. So again, our period is 2 pi over 4 equals pi over 2. So our period again is pi over 2. Now next, in order to find the value of x, so since x sub 1 is the x value or the value of x where all the cycle begin in the origin form, so x sub 1 is 0. Now x sub 2, the formula of x sub 2 is x sub 1 plus the period over 4 wherein 0 plus pi over 2 is pi over 2. And we have now x sub 3, wherein x sub 3, the formula of x sub 3 is x sub 2, x sub 2 added by the period over 4, wherein x sub 2 is pi over 2 added by the period over 4, which is pi over 2 again. So pi over 2 plus pi over 2 is pi. Now next we're going to find the x sub 4, the value of x sub 4. Now we have x sub 3, wherein x sub 3 is pi, plus the period over 4, which is pi over 2. So pi plus pi over 2, we have 3 pi over 2. And lastly, x sub 5, the formula for x sub 5 is x sub 4, which is 3 pi over 2, added by the period over 4, which is pi over 2. So 3 pi over 2 plus pi over 2, we have 2 pi. So this is now our new x value, or 5 key points, and we're going to use in graphing y is equals to 2 sine x, or the amplitude of 2. So we're going to take a list for our x values again. So we have x, so our x value, we have 0 for x sub 1, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Now, we're going to find now the y values. Now, if you remember in the original form of the y is equals to sine x, y there is 0, 1, 0, negative 1, and 0. All we need to do here right now is to multiply the amplitude in the origin form of y value. So since we have the amplitude 2, so we need to multiply 2 by 0. So 2 multiplied by 0 is 0. And 2 multiplied by 1 is 2, and then 2 multiplied by 0 is 0 again, and 2 multiplied by negative 1 is negative 2, and 2 multiplied by 0 is 0. So this is now our table, and this table is what we're going to use in graphing y equals to 2 sine x. So again, we only need to use the Cartesian plane, which consists of the y value, the y-axis and the x-axis. So again, the x-axis we have 0, we have pi over 2, we have pi, we have 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And since our amplitude is 2, we have the amplitude 2, we have to put in the y value 2 numbers. And so it's to the opposite side. We have negative 1 and negative 2, positive 1 and positive 2. So since we have now our table ready for plotting, we have 0 and 0 to plot it on here. Next is pi over 2 and 2, pi over 2 and 2, there. Pi and 0, 3 pi over 2 and negative 2, and 2 pi and 0. next step, we're going to connect it smoothly with the curved line. So this is now the graph of our y equals to 2 sine x. Now if we're going to compare it to the y sine x, so y sine x, if you remember, y sine x has x of 0 and y 0, and then pi over 2 and positive 1, and then pi and 0, and then 3 pi over 2 and negative 1, and it also has 2 pi and 0. And if we're going to connect it again with the curved line, that is now the graph. If we're going to compare y a sine x with the value of 2, the amplitude of 2, with the y is equals to sine x. So again, this is our y 2 sine x, and this is our y sine x. So what if we're going to graph y sine x but in the form of y is equals to a sine bx? We have here an example. For example, we have y is equals to 3 sine 2x. So first we're going to identify the amplitude. So the amplitude here is 3, and the period is now 2 pi over b. This is now the formula of our period if we are having bx. Now since 2 pi over b, which is b is 2, now 2 pi over 2 is equals to pi. So our period now is pi. Now second, after identifying the amplitude and the period, we're going to find out the value of x for the 5 key points. So remember, period is pi. Follow again or the formula period over 4. So we have period, we have pi, and 4. So this is now our period. So this is now our value of x. We have 0, pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi. We're going to take a list for our x values. Okay, now we have 0, pi, pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi. So after finding the x value, again, we're going to find now the y value, the value of y. So again, since our amplitude is 3, we only need to multiply it from the original form of value. So we have 3 multiplied by 0, we have 0. 3 multiplied by 1 is 3. 3 multiplied by 0 is 0. And 3 multiplied by negative 1 is negative 3. And 3 multiplied by 0 is 0. So this is now our table. We only need to use the Cartesian plane in order to plot the points. Pi and 0. And again, connect it smoothly with the use of curved line. And this is now the graph of our function, or the function of y equals 3 sine 2x. Therefore, we're going to compare it with the y sine x. So again, y sine x looks like this. That is the difference between the two. Okay, now we have our last formation. We have to graph y sine x, but in the form of y is equals to a sine multiplied by bx minus c. So we have here now the c, wherein it's more concerned about the phase shifting. So we have here now the so say for example we have y is equals to 4 sine multiplied by 2x minus 2 pi over 3. So, in order to graph the function of y equals to 4 sine multiplied by 2x minus 2 pi over 3, we need to identify first the amplitude. So the amplitude there is, we have 4. This is the amplitude, the value of a. Next is the period, which is period is 2 pi over b, wherein 2 pi and b is our 2 cancel it out, pi. And we have on a phase shift. Formula for a phase shift is negative c over b. So our c here is negative 2 pi over 3. So negative times negative is positive. So the value of c there is positive 2 pi over 3 over b, wherein b is 2. So 2 pi over 3 divided by 2 is pi over 3. Pi over 3. So pi over 3 now is our new starting point of the cycle. So after this one, after identifying the amplitude, the period, and the phase shift, we need to find the x value for the 5 key points with the use of the starting point of the cycle, pi over 3. So in finding the value of x, we need to follow again or use the formula period over 4. So our period is pi and followed by 4. So this is now our period. Now in finding the x value, we need to follow or use again the formula from x sub 1 to x sub 5. So for our x sub 1, we have the phase shift. So instead of using 0 for x sub 1, we have the new starting point of cycle, which is the pi over 3. This is now our x values. We have pi over 3, 7 pi over 12, 5 pi over 6, 13 pi over 12, and we have 4 pi over 3 pi. So since we already identified the value of x for the 5 key points, we're now going to find the value of y. So if you remember again the ranging form of y, we have 0, we have also 1, 0, negative 1, and 0. So since our amplitude is 4, we only need to multiply it to the ranging form of y value. So we have 4 multiplied by 0 is 0, multiplied by 1 is 4, multiplied by 0, multiplied by negative 1 is negative 4, 4 multiplied by 0 is 0. So this is now our table that we're going to use in graphing using the Cartesian plane, having the x-axis and the y-axis. So we have here now the Cartesian plane consists with the x-axis and the y-axis together with the value of x and the y. So all we need to do now is to plot this up. So we have pi over 3 and 0. So plot this in here. Now the graph of our 4 sine multiplied by 2x minus 2 pi over 3. Now in graphing y cosine x, or we're finished in sine, in graphing periodic function of sine, we're now focused on graphing the periodic function of cosine. So we have here now y cosine x. So in graphing y cosine x, it is just the same in graphing y sine x, where it has a period of 2 pi. Yes, it has a period of 2 pi, but the only difference is that it has a different value of y. Because in y cosine x, the value of y there, we have 1, 0, negative 1, 0, and 1. That is the original value of y value and the periodic function of cosine. So since our period is 2 pi and we already identified the period, which is 2 pi, we're now going to find the x value for the 5 key points in graphing y cosine x. So the formula is just the same, and we need to use period over 4. So period is 2 pi over 4. 2 pi over 4 is, the answer is pi over 2. So this is now our basis. So in order to get the value of 5 key points, the x values still have the same formula. X1 is having the first cycle, or where the value of x, where all the cycle begin, which is 0, pi over 2. And last but not least is x sub 5. We have the formula for x sub 5. We have x sub 4, which is 3 pi over 2 plus pi over 2. This is 2 pi. The answer is 2 pi. So by using the formula period over 4 and for the x sub 1 to x sub 5, we have we are able to identify the 5 key points of the x value of our graph. We have 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So we're going to arrange them in table so that we can graph them later. So this is our table now. We have value of x 0, pi over 2 pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And remember the original form of the y value for our cosine, we have 1, 0, negative 1, 0, and 1. And this is our table that we're going to follow in order to graph the y cosine. So in order to graph the y cosine, we need to use the Cartesian plane, which consists of x-axis and the y-axis. So we need to draw the Cartesian plane. So we have the x value. We're going to put it in the x-axis. We have 0, the center. Next is pi over 2. Next is pi. Next is 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi. So by following the table, we have to plot 0 and 1. This is how it looks like. Yeah, it's not perfect, but this is how it looks like. So this is now the graph of our y cosine x. Now in graphing the y cosine x, it is just the same in graphing y sine x, wherein it has also a period of 2 pi, but the only difference just it has a different value of y. So y cosine x still have the form of ya cosine bx and ya cosine multiplied by bx minus c, which is the phase shifting same as a sine, where it has ya sine bx and ya sine multiplied by bx minus c. So I hope you learned something from the lesson that we tackled today, and here are some exercises that you can use in order to assess your learning skills in graphing periodic function of sine and cosine. So here are the exercises to graph the periodic function. Number 1 is y 3 sine x. We have also y 4 cosine x and y to sine 3x minus pi over 3, and y is equals to 3 cosine multiplied to 2x minus pi.